Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I will be taking you through a sample extract from Henry Kcse's A Doll's House. And our excerpt begins on page 89. That is from the original text where Krogstad says why, what is it? Then it ends on page 91 where Krogstad says, I have never had such an amazing piece of good fortune in my life. I will take us through some questions from that excerpt. So I would ask you that if you are watching this video, you can have your copy of the text A Doll's House and move with us through the excerpt. Question 1. What happens just before this excerpt? What happens just before the excerpt? So on page 89, what takes place immediately before the excerpt is that Mrs. Linde says, hush, the tarantella, go, go. Before that, Krogstad thanks Christine and says that now he shall find a way to clear himself in the eyes of the world. And that is preceded with Mrs. Linde saying that she wants to be a mother to Krogstad's children, for they need a mother, and that they too, Mrs. Linde and Krogstad, need each other, and that she can dare anything together with him. So in a chronological order, the candidate should give the happenings just immediately before the excerpt. And depending on the number of marks allocated, the candidate will use that to determine how many points that you're going to put across. Like in this case, we have 4 marks allotted for that. So in a chronological order, we will say that the first thing that happens is that Mrs. Linde tells Krogstad that she wants to be a mother to his children. After that, Krogstad thanks Christine and then after that, Krogstad also tells Christine that he shall find a way to clear himself in the eyes of the world. Then later, Mrs. Linde tells Krogstad to go as the tarantella has ended. So one thing that is clear here is for a candidate to score marks on this plot question, asking what happens immediately before and immediately after, it requires a thorough mastery of the text. So this text at All's House is just 120 pages. The candidate therefore ought to go over the play as many times as possible so as to answer this plot question. Sometimes it can be tested as place the excerpt in its immediate context. In such a situation, the candidate will give points on what happens before and points about what happens after. Question 2. Using your knowledge of the text, explain Krogstad's despair that Mrs. Linde is referring to in this excerpt. So, Mrs. Linde, within the excerpt, makes this statement: I understand very well to what lengths a man like you might be driven by despair. And this is in response to the statement made by Krogstad that, and in spite of that, you have the courage to. Then Mrs. Linde makes that statement. So we are asked to explain Krogstad's despair that Mrs. Linde is referring to here. And one response would be that Mrs. Linde deserted him. There was a point that Mrs. Linde left Krogstad for a rich man, for there was no prospect of riches on the part of Krogstad then. So he became hopeless as a result of being jilted by Mrs. Linde. Another, Torvald has also sent him a dismissal letter. So the 2 points pronounces the despair which Mrs. Linde understands to what lengths a man in despair can go to. Question 3. Nails, a woman who was once sold herself for another's sake, doesn't do it a second time. How did Mrs. Linde sell herself and what makes her say this? So in the course of the excerpt, and that is on page 90 if you have your text. On page 90, the second conversation by Mrs. Linde from the top, she says, Nails, a woman who has once sold herself for another's sake doesn't do it a second time. The question asks, how did Mrs. Linde sell herself and what makes her say this? So Mrs. Linde got married to a rich man whom she did not love, to take care of her ailing mother and two brothers. And the reason why she's saying this is that she wants to make amends with her life, since the rich man left her nothing. And she paradoxically says that the rich man did not even leave for her grief to live upon. The fourth question how does Krogstad's mood change in this excerpt? Explain the reason for his change of the mood. So at the beginning of the excerpt, there is a part where Krogstad mentions, if only I could undo what I have done, to show that he is kind of sad and is in a rueful mood, a regretful mood. So at the beginning, Krogstad is in a rueful mood and you illustrate by making the statement, if only I can do, I can undo what I have done. And that rueful or regretful mood changes to a joyful mood at the end when he says, I have never had such an amazing piece of good fortune in my life. And this happens as a result of him getting back together with Mrs. Linde and promising to love one another once again. Question 5. Mrs. Linde changes her mind of convincing Krogstad to withdraw the revealing letter he wrote to Helmer upon seeing incredible things in Helmer's house in the last 24 hours. What are these incredible things that Mrs. Linde witnessed? So one incredible thing that Mrs. Linde has witnessed is Nora's anxiety. And Nora's anxiety has come as a result of Nora trying to conceal the falsehood that she's been harboring, that it was Krogstad who lent her the 250 pounds used to take Torvald Helmer to the south in Italy for treatment, and it is not her papa as Torvald has believed up to this point. The other part of the question was that what are these incredible things that Mrs. Linde has witnessed? She has witnessed Nora's anxiety due to the concealment of the 250 pound loan by Nora from her husband Torvald, and she now wants that the couple to get away with the concealment so that Nora can finally have a clear conscience. Viewers, as we continue with our lesson, allow me to ask those who are new here to kindly hit onto that subscribe button so that anytime we produce a video like this, YouTube will automatically notify you. Again, to my subscribers, I continue to thank you so very much. Question 6. There are twists and turns in this excerpt. Explain 2 of these twists and turns. One is with Mrs. Linde. And it was Mrs. Linde's intention to meet Krogstad so that she can convince him to withdraw or demand back his letter unread from Torvald. But when the chance presents itself and Krogstad is willing to demand back his letter unread, Mrs. Linde dissuades him from doing that. That is a twist and turn. Secondly, it is with Krogstad. Krogstad has promised revenge and he wants to avenge his sack from a small post at the bank. And while blackmailing Nora previously, he had made it clear that if he goes down and he gets the sack from the bank, then Nora is also going to go down with him. It is therefore interesting and quite incredible that when he already has his revenge on his hands, then Mrs. Linde comes and they're able to make up things and they are able to work their love again. Now he's not keen on revenge and he wants to demand back his letter unread from Torvald. That is also another twist and turn. Lastly, that is the last question. But there is one thing I can do in any case, and I shall do it at once. That is a statement made by Krogstad in this excerpt. So the question is, what is it that Krogstad does and how does it affect the rest of the play? And what he does is that Krogstad writes another letter setting the Helmers free. He writes another letter setting the Helmers free, and in doing that, he also sends back the bond that Nora signed while receiving the £250 loan used to take Torvald to the southern Italy for treatment. When that letter arrives, it finds when Torvald has already chastised Nora for taking that loan, calling her names a miserable creature, a hypocrite, a liar, and was a criminal. So this letter therefore exposes the hypocrisy in Helmer because he shouts that he is finally off the hook and that he is finally free. When Nora determines or detects that kind of hypocrisy, she then decides to walk out of her marriage. So that is surely what that action that Krogstad at this point promises to discharge. That is how it is consequential to this family. Viewers, we come to the end of our discussion on the sample excerpt. Thank you. Until next time.